welcome back to today's video. Today's video is going to be all about creative ruts, and you guys know that as photographers and as creative people, as artists, it is such a struggle. Like, the struggle is real every day with being a creative or someone that runs their own business in a creative business. It's really hard to not get in a creative rut at times, and I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone who has never been in a creative rut. It's something that happens to the best of us, and for some people that can be career ending because they consistently find themselves in that position of being in a creative rut where it really gets them down, it gets their confidence down. I wanted to talk about it today because I feel like a lot of people do struggle with that, and I do get a lot of questions about what keeps you inspired, what keeps you motivated, what keeps you creative juices flowing all the time. And the answer is not really too straightforward there, because it really depends on obviously what mood I'm in throughout the week to week and how I'm feeling about my photography on the day. And it does change sometimes day to day, week to week, in terms of how you feel about your photography, how you feel about your work. For me, I tend to have a really bad pattern of doing photo shoots and then going back to those same photo shoots that I loved the images from, going back to them in a few weeks' time, and then I hate them all of a sudden. Like, I just have that realization, it clicks in my head, and then I'm like, no, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And then after a while of doing that, it tends to get those creative juices really restricted, and they don't seem to just flow anymore. It tends to get you so creatively blocked because you just feel like you're never doing good enough and your work's never good enough. It's also really hard to look at sometimes other people's work online, and I've talked about this before, where you do look at other people's work and you compare yourself to them, and that's when the self-confidence starts to go down as well. And instead of looking at their work and being inspired, it's kind of more of a situation where you're looking at their work and you're thinking about your own work in the worst light, in that comparison stage, and that's not ever a good thing. And sometimes I think people do need to take a step back from social media when it comes to that sort of time and really find the things that they enjoy and things that do help them feel creative again. It's not as easy as it sounds to get out of a creative rut a lot of the time, and for those who probably own their small businesses, who own their photography businesses, who are creatives, will know this. It's hard to stay inspired, but you do have to have that level of motivation there in the background, just working away consistently and knowing that no matter what kind of rut situation that you get into, that you can get yourself out of it eventually. And with creative ruts in particular, I've suffered from a lot of them over the years. Some have been quite small and have lasted maybe a week or two, and some creative ruts have lasted around a year. And they're the worst ones, because sometimes when that happens, your consistency really does stop with your work, with how your business is going. And there was a year in particular for me where I was working full-time. I think it was around 2017. And I feel like my work in that year was just, I kind of took a step backwards because I didn't shoot a lot. I probably shot maybe a couple of times in the whole year. And that was really sad for me to admit, because it's photography, and photography is what I'd always wanted to do, and I knew that. But at the same time, I'd started to do these videos, especially on YouTube, where I was talking about taking a different direction and sort of giving the vibe that I wasn't really enjoying photography anymore, which I wasn't at that point. I felt like photography had become more of a chore than something that I wanted to do, and that was really scary for me, because I'd always had this dream and this vision of how my career was going to go, and it was just going further and further away from that. And I think that really sucks when you start to find that some of your earliest work was your most creative, and then you look at your work today, you know, 5 or 6 years later, and then you're not finding it to be creative enough, you're not finding it to be good enough, and you're struggling to think of ideas. Like, it's such a problem when that happens, because even to this day, there's times where I'm trying to create a mood board and I'm like, what can I do? Like, how do I find this inspiration? Like, what do I want this shoot to look like? I have no idea. And sometimes it really does just involve you pushing yourself to look through for hours on end on Pinterest, on other people's Instagrams, and just really fishing through to have a look for those images that really do inspire you and that you love, and that you want to do something like that. And that can take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And especially when you're not in the mood to do that, when you're really feeling demotivated, when you don't feel creative, it's hard to be creative when you don't feel creative. It's as simple as that, really. And I do think that year for me in 2017 was very much like that. I just had no desire really to think about fashion photography a lot of the time. I was so busy with my full-time job, which was not in a photography field. I was so busy learning and doing new things for that I just, everything with photography got pushed to the side. And I do give it to people out there that have a full-time job and still do photography on the side, because it's such a hard thing to do. It's such a hard thing to find that motivation and that love for it when you're literally working full-time somewhere else in an unrelated field, and you're trying to just get through that in the week and then also having that on top of it. It can be very, very draining. So I do give it to people that do that every day. But yeah, that year for me just really flew by, and before I'd known it, a year had passed and I'd barely done any photo shoots. I'd barely done anything for my career. And the really sad thing was, I told myself years and years ago, if I can just do one thing every day that gets me a little bit closer, one thing every day that gets me a bit closer to where I want to be with my career, then I'll be happy with that. And sometimes that's how you have to tell yourself as a creative. You know, sometimes that can be a small thing. You know, it can be scheduling some photos for Instagram. And that's just something, you know, like something every day that's going to get you a little bit closer. And I hadn't done anything in nearly a year, and that was really upsetting for me, because I thought, you know, my full-time job wasn't going that well towards the end of it. I figured out that that was just not the job for me, that was not the career I wanted. You know, I tried something new, but once again I was back to photography. I was back to wishing that I was doing that. And it's not that it was necessarily making me more creative or making me feel more creative because I hated this other job. It was more the fact that I just had felt so bad about leaving it out there for so long without doing anything or working towards that. I kind of felt ashamed almost, and I really beat myself up about it. But looking back after that year, I think everything happens for a reason. It's pretty clear that sometimes that's the way you have to look at things. And after that year, I made a promise to myself that in 2018 I was going to do something that was really going to help my career and really going to push myself. So I did the 52-week project. And the 52-week project really changed my photography in just a year. Like, I look back at it now and I think it was such a good thing to do. Even though I didn't like, maybe more than half the photo shoots that I did weren't really necessarily going to go in my portfolio at the end of it. I think my style changed so much within that year. I found beauty photography, and beauty photography was that new life I needed with my photography. And that's what I want to talk about next, is finding things that really do spark interest for you. And trying new things can sometimes be the thing that can save your creativeness, really. I feel like if I hadn't found beauty photography, I'd still be going along probably at the same level. Whereas I found beauty photography, it was something so new for me. And I felt like I was almost starting photography from scratch, because I hadn't done a lot of studio work. I hadn't done a lot of close-up portraiture like that, and the retouching process was completely different. But that was so exciting to me that I was almost starting from scratch again, because I had so much to learn. And I felt like I was not going to stop learning for such a long time if I began that journey of beauty photography. And I'm so glad I did, because it's just brought new joy into what I've been doing and getting me excited to do photography again, because it's just new. And I think that's such a really interesting fact, because some people do get so bored with what they're doing after a while. And if there's one piece of advice I can give from this video, it is to try something new. Even if it's a different genre of photography, even if it's a different genre of creativeness, you know, anything that relates to it, just get out there and try it, give it a go and see if you enjoy it, because if you do, it could be the thing that really does set you off on your career and brings your work to the next level. You know, I think as photographers sometimes we're really hard on ourselves for not producing good enough work, or for not being creative enough, or not feeling inspired, when the reality is you don't have to feel inspired every day. I'm sure for most people that work a full-time job, they don't necessarily want to go to work every day, but they do. And sometimes that's the way that I think we have to look at our work, is just looking at it as, I just need to keep producing things, and finding that inspiration, whatever that might be. For me, finding inspiration means traveling. I love traveling. I love going to new locations, to new places, and then just having those new experiences in different countries and places around the world. That for me has always been an inspiration. I love looking at magazines. I love looking at photographers on Instagram and Pinterest, and I just really love looking and doing that researching phase as well. Makeup has always been a really big inspiration to me too, so I have actually found myself watching a lot more makeup videos on YouTube because I feel like that kind of inspires me to do different looks. With beauty photography, it's funny, I'd always found more of a connection to makeup necessarily than fashion, so beauty photography almost felt quite natural for me to move into that. And I think that's why I felt more creative too, because I was enjoying that part of it. But creative ruts are not easy to get out of. I'm not going to make this sound like you can just jump out of it in a second and you're going to feel inspired again. You just need to find those things that really do help with that. Even if it's just like taking a break throughout the day. You know, everyone needs a break. You can't sort of sit at your computer all day long for 20 hours on end thinking of things to do. You know, you need that time to just sit and read a book or have a cup of tea, watch your favorite TV show, go out, see a friend. You know, you need that time to yourself to really regain those creative juices. They're not going to be there all the time, and sometimes we just need to not beat ourselves up about it as creatives. We need to make sure that we're taking that time for ourselves to go and find out what inspires us, what we really enjoy doing, and then you can always come back to it with fresh eyes. You can always come back to it with a fresh look and direction with your work. But one piece of advice, like I said, is to try something new. It doesn't matter what you're trying that's new, even if it's a new retouching technique, always try and keep yourself learning. I think that's one thing that really inspires me too. Looking at YouTube videos, looking at your favorite photographers, and if they've got like a bit of a course or something that you'd want to do. I think with the internet age, it's just so easy to go out there and learn, and more of us should be doing that on a daily basis. YouTube is a great tool for that, and I watch plenty of photographers on YouTube that really inspire me, and I think it's such a great way for us to learn. So I would definitely recommend doing that when you do have the time. Just learn a new technique, or if you're doing studio photography, learn how to use a new modifier. Maybe go and buy a new backdrop, or test out some really cool sheets or coloured fabrics or something as a backdrop. You know, there's just so many things that you can do that don't have to be huge changes but can make all the difference in the end. So this video doesn't have a lot of tips in it, I will admit, and there's going to be more videos that I'll be doing in the future that will have more tips and similar sort of style videos with creative ruts, because it can kind of lead into a lot of different motivation issues, so I'd really like to talk about that a little bit further in depth in future videos. But let me know what you guys think of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you can relate to it. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please let me know what you would like to see on my channel in future, or what kind of videos you want me to do, and I'll definitely be adding them to my requests list. So thank you guys so much for watching again, and I'll see you next time. Bye!